On February 18, 2001, the Florida sun poured down on Daytona International Speedway, casting long shadows across the asphalt as fans settled into their seats for the 43rd running of the Daytona 500. The atmosphere was electric, a mixture of excitement, tradition, and raw anticipation that only NASCAR's biggest race could generate. It was the Super Bowl of stock car racing, the event where legends were made. For one man, a legend already written in black and white, it would become his final chapter. Dale Earnhardt was NASCAR. He wasn't just a driver, he was an institution, a symbol of toughness, risk, and rebellion. To his fans, he was a hero who could muscle a car into victory lane through sheer willpower. To his rivals, he was the Intimidator, a driver who could make the bravest men flinch when they saw the black number. 3 Chevrolet filling their mirrors. His 7 championships tied him with Richard Petty, and his aggressive take-no-prisoners style turned him into both a villain and a folk hero. At nearly 50 years old, Earnhardt was still going strong, respected as much for his grit as for his ability to shape the future of the sport through his team, Dale Earnhardt Incorporated. That Sunday morning, the story seemed to write itself. His son, Dale Earnhardt Jr., was rising fast in the NASCAR ranks, carrying the weight of the family name. Michael Waltrip, Earnhardt's longtime friend and driver for DEI, was desperate for a career-defining victory, still winless after more than 400 Cup Series starts. And Dale Sr., the veteran patriarch, was poised not just to race, but to orchestrate something greater, to guide his son and teammate to glory on the sport's biggest stage. It was a picture of continuity, of the passing of a torch, and of the fierce loyalty Dale carried not just to his own ambitions, but to those racing under his banner. The race itself unfolded with the drama typical of Daytona. High speeds, tight drafting packs, moments of chaos followed by lulls of strategy. Earnhardt drove with purpose, sometimes aggressively, sometimes conservatively, but always with that instinct that made him one of the greatest restrictor plate racers in history. As the laps wound down, the picture became clearer. Waltrip and Earnhardt Jr. were running up front, poised to finish 1-2, and Dale Sr. had slipped into the role of guardian. He wasn't making a charge for victory. Instead, he was blocking, defending, holding off the snarling horde of competitors behind him, ensuring that DEI would claim its greatest triumph. For fans, it was the perfect script. Waltrip in first, Jr. in second, and the Intimidator sealing the deal from third, running interference for his drivers. But in racing, perfection rarely lasts. As the field screamed down the backstretch on the final lap, Sterling Marlin's Dodge brushed the left rear of Earnhardt's car. The number 3 wobbled, slid down the banking toward the apron, and then, as Dale tried to correct, it shot back up the track. In a split second, Ken Schrader's car clipped him, and the black Chevrolet slammed nose first into the concrete wall at nearly 160 miles per hour. To the untrained eye, the crash did not look catastrophic. There were no flips, no fireballs, no debris scattered across the track. Compared to the spectacular wrecks that had filled highlight reels for years, it seemed almost ordinary. The cameras cut away quickly, showing Waltrip crossing the line to win his first Daytona 500, Jr. finishing close behind in second. Waltrip's victory celebration began, a moment years in the making. For a few moments it seemed like DEI's fairy tale ending had been achieved, but then the focus shifted back to turn 4. The number 3 was motionless, crumpled against the wall, Schrader's car resting alongside it. Ken Schrader climbed out of his vehicle and walked toward Earnhardt's car. What he saw inside drained the color from his face. His body language betrayed the truth before any words were spoken. He waved frantically for medical help, a signal of desperation, of urgency, of fear. Something was terribly wrong. Fans in the stands sensed it, even if they didn't yet know the details. Television commentators grew somber, their words careful and uncertain. Hours dragged on without a clear update. Those who knew Earnhardt's toughness, who had seen him walk away from wrecks that would have crippled others, clung to hope. Surely the Intimidator would be all right. Surely he'd climb out, dust himself off, and flash that cocky grin that said he had beaten death once again. But as the silence stretched on, hope dimmed. That evening, NASCAR President Mike Helton stepped to the podium. His voice cracked as he delivered the words no one wanted to hear. "This is undeniably one of the toughest announcements I've ever had to make. After the accident in Turn 4 at the end of the Daytona 500, we've lost Dale Earnhardt." The shock was immediate and overwhelming. Fans wept openly in the grandstands. Across the country, living rooms fell silent. Broadcasters who had covered Dale for decades struggled to maintain composure. It was unthinkable. The man who had seemed larger than life, tougher than steel, was gone. NASCAR's greatest icon had been felled not by age, not by retirement, but by a crash that looked almost ordinary. The autopsy revealed the cause: a basilar skull fracture. In layman's terms, the violent forces of the crash had whipped Earnhardt's head forward while his body remained restrained by his seat belts, breaking the base of his skull instantly. It was the same type of injury that had killed Adam Petty, Kenny Irwin Jr., and Tony Roper in the months leading up to Daytona. Safety experts had been sounding alarms, but tradition and resistance had slowed progress. The solution already existed: the head and neck support device, or HANS. The HANS device tethered a driver's helmet to their shoulders, preventing the fatal whiplash motion that caused basilar skull fractures. It was not new. Drivers in other series had already begun adopting it. But in NASCAR, it was unpopular. Many claimed it was uncomfortable, that it restricted vision and movement. Dale Earnhardt himself had been among its skeptics, dismissing it as unnecessary. In the hyper-macho culture of the garage, toughness was often equated with risk-taking. Safety, some thought, dulled the edge of racing's danger. On February 18, 2001, that mindset proved fatal. The death of Dale Earnhardt was more than a tragedy. It was a reckoning. The sport could no longer cling to the excuse that fatalities were simply part of racing. The Intimidator's passing made it clear that change was not optional, it was urgent. NASCAR moved quickly. Within months, the HANS device became mandatory. Drivers who had once resisted now wore it without question, their skepticism replaced by the haunting memory of what had happened to Earnhardt. But the changes didn't stop there. NASCAR partnered with engineers to develop SAFER barriers, walls designed to absorb impact energy rather than reflect it back into the car. Car design was revolutionized with the car of tomorrow, a model that prioritized driver survival with reinforced cockpits and energy-dissipating structures. Seatbelts were re-engineered, helmets upgraded, restraint systems improved. The safety culture of the sport was reborn in the shadow of Daytona 2001. The results became clear in the years that followed. Time and again, drivers walked away from crashes that once would have been deadly. In 2008, Michael McDowell survived a horrifying head-on crash into the wall during qualifying at Texas, flipping violently before coming to rest, and emerged without serious injury. In 2020, Ryan Newman endured a terrifying accident in the Daytona 500, his car flipping and being struck at full speed by another competitor. For 2 minutes, fans feared the worst, memories of Earnhardt flooding back. Yet Newman walked out of the hospital days later, alive because of the very changes spurred by Earnhardt's death. For many, that is Dale's final legacy. He gave everything to the sport in life, and in death, he gave it something even greater: safety that would protect generations of drivers. Every time a competitor climbs out of a wreck alive, every time a family avoids the phone call that changes everything, it is because NASCAR was forced to change after February 18, 2001. And yet, Dale Earnhardt's story is not defined solely by that final moment. He was more than the crash, more than the tragedy. He was the man who could win with ferocity and lose with dignity, who inspired fans from blue-collar towns and became a symbol of perseverance. His battles on track with Jeff Gordon electrified the 1990s. His dominance at Talladega was legendary, his iconic black number 3, snarling down the straightaways, is still burned into memory. He was the man who told younger drivers exactly where they stood, sometimes with a smile, sometimes with a nudge of his bumper. He was the father who proudly watched his son carry on the family name, even as he carved his own legend. 3 years after his death, Dale Earnhardt Jr. returned to Daytona and won the 2004 Daytona 500. It was a cathartic moment, a release of grief and celebration rolled into one. The crowd erupted, some cheering, some crying, many doing both. It felt for a fleeting moment as if Dale Sr. was there too, guiding his son to victory, reminding everyone that while his body was gone, his spirit still roared on every track. More than 2 decades later, Earnhardt's impact is still felt. His number, the number 3, remains sacred. Fans still wear his gear, fly his flags, and honor his memory. His image still graces murals and tributes across the country. To many, he remains the greatest ever, not because of his statistics, but because of the way he made them feel. He was fearless, authentic, and unapologetically himself. That is why February 18, 2001, is remembered not just as NASCAR's darkest day, but also as its turning point. Out of that heartbreak emerged progress, innovation, and a recognition that heroes deserve protection as much as adoration. Dale Earnhardt's last ride ended in tragedy, but in so many ways, it never truly ended at all. It lives on every time a driver straps in, every time a wreck occurs and the driver walks away, every time fans remember that the man who intimidated the world also safeguarded it with his sacrifice. The Intimidator may have left the track that day in silence, but his voice still echoes through NASCAR. He taught the sport that courage is not only about racing fearlessly, but also about embracing change to ensure tomorrow. His death forced that lesson upon NASCAR, and in doing so, he saved countless lives. That, more than any victory, may be his greatest legacy. If you have watched the story till the end, and you believe Dale's legacy deserves to be remembered and passed on, then make sure to like this video so more fans can discover it. And if you want more powerful stories from racing history, moments of triumph, tragedy, and transformation, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so you never miss a ride through the past.